ahead of possibly Arsenal's biggest and most important transfer window in over a decade, Arsenal are being linked with every single player under the sun, or at least that's what it feels like. In today's episode, I'm going to break down all those rumours, give my opinions on whether they'd be a good fit, a bad fit, whether Mikel Arteta would even want them, and whether it's a realistic signing. This is the first episode of this summer's Transfers Unfiltered series. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. Wherever you are, I hope you are well. As you heard at the top of this episode, this is an episode all about the summer transfer window. It's the first episode of Transfers Unfiltered. So I'm going to go position by position today and talk through some of the rumours that we have got going on, some of the things that are being rumoured in the papers, rumoured all around, and I want to give you my opinion on would those be a good fit for Arsenal, would it be a good signing, and then can we even do it? We're going to go position by position, and we are going to start with the one that you really, really want to talk about, the number 9 up top striker. Before we get started though, if you would be so kind to go and find wherever you can on your podcast app of choice and just leave a review. A 5-star review does a huge amount to help me on my mission to get the Arsenal Unfiltered coverage into the ears of as many Arsenal fans as possible. So if you are happy to do that, please go ahead, find that area. I think it's top right on Spotify. It's at the bottom of the page on Apple Podcasts, and just leave a 5-star review. It really, really helps. Okay, let's start with striker, and then we will of course go through. We will look at the wing position. Left wing is something Arsenal are definitely looking at. We'll look at defensive midfield. We will look at backup goalie as well, and see whether there's some moves going on there. But let's start up front because a new name has been added into the list. We've had 3 men on our list for as long as we can remember. One of them is basically priced out. That's Alexander Isak. The other 2, Sesko and Gyokeres. Let's talk about them quickly before we talk about the third man who seems to have been added into the list. The Sesko Gyokeres debate. It rages on. Should we go with the ready-made Gyokeres, who I'm not sure. I don't know how much I back that opinion that Gyokeres is ready-made for the Premier League. I think it's a risk. I think it is a risk. Or do we go for Sesko, who is supposedly the less ready-made, and the kind of more someone who will need to be moulded more? Now, the thing that I'm struggling with these two now is I think right now the prices are so unknown. We both have seen that they have release clauses, and those release clauses are changing over time. We have heard that both clubs would not be willing to do less than the release clause, or they would be willing to do less than the release clause. Gyokeres is apparently around 60 million. Sesko, you hear the 60 million, but you also hear it stretching up to 70, 80, as Leipzig sort of changed their tune. I think his release clause has changed, or based on performance-based bonuses. So it's all a bit up in the air. No one really knows the price. And of course, no one really knows the wage either. That's a really big thing that we seem to be talking about with other people, other targets such as Rodrygo, who will come onto later. But we aren't talking about the wage with Sesko and Gyokeres. We don't know whether Gyokeres, because of his wonderful 2 seasons in Portugal, is demanding a huge wage. We don't know that. So I think it's a really interesting time. And for me, I guess my preference is Sesko, because I do think the Gyokeres, all transfers are at risk, right? But you can always reduce your risk by buying young. And I do think Gyokeres is not as ready-made as people are suggesting and saying. I think Sesko is probably more ready than people are giving him credit for. And because of that, I think there is a really, really important thing around the age. I don't think we sign Gyokeres and it's cool, that's going to work. I think there's a risk there. It's probably a little bit more sure than Sesko, but at least Sesko has real resale value and has capacity to grow into Mikel Arteta's style, how he wants to do things. I think he gives a real threat aerially that Gyokeres kind of does, but kind of doesn't, in a weird way. And look, I really struggle with the idea that because you've scored, I think it's 60 odd goals in Portugal this year, you're going to score that amount, or well, we don't even need that amount, but you're going to score quite so easily in the Premier League. I struggle with that idea. I'm not sure it's quite as black and white as that. But for me, the point I'm trying to make, these two players, it's sort of I'm 51% Sesko, 49% Gyokeres. Like, I'm not going to be upset if we sign Gyokeres, and I don't think anyone will be upset either way. As an Arsenal fan, I think personally, I think if you are upset if we sign Sesko and you want a Gyokeres or vice versa, you're probably just looking to pick holes in stuff, right? Now, the thing that I'm keen on is that we get the one in that is the most fair price. I don't want to be paying 90 million for either of these players because we've got other business to do, and we get it done early. So I want to see that happen. So that's really why I think this new rumour is quite interesting. The Julian Alvarez rumour has come out, and I first heard about this on the Charles, pardon me, the Inside Arsenal podcast with Charles Watts. He spoke about this, and he kind of picked this rumour apart, and it makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to rehash it. I'm just going to kind of give it to you how Charles Watts gave it on his podcast, because I think it's a really good point. It feels too easy. It's too easy a link for the papers to write about and to make. But Bert has come to Arsenal, so now we're linked with an Atletico Madrid player. He's only just gone there. He went there for big money. He's a big part of the Atletico Madrid team. And the point that Charles made is the rumour's just too easy. It's probably just being churned out in the rumour mill by, I believe it's Marca in Spain, to try and get attention. Now, that I think is a very good point, but I'm going to add my piece to it. If it's not just being churned out in the rumour mill, and Julian Alvarez is actually available, he wants to come back to England, maybe he's settled in Spain on the pitch, but not off the pitch, family, all that sort of stuff. If he wants to come back to England and he wants to play for Arsenal under Mikel Arteta, there's of course a Man City connection there, although they didn't play together at the time. The style that they were both working under Pep won't be too dissimilar. We should do that, in my opinion. I think Julian Alvarez is far more of a sure thing than Sesko or Gyokeres. And I think Julian Alvarez brings so much on the pitch. I mean, when he used to come on for City, it was sort of a scenario where you'd watch him play and you go, how is this guy not playing? Like, I know they've got Haaland, but he's an incredible player. And I think he is a real talent. I don't think this is ever going to happen. I think it would be crazy money for Arsenal. I think Atletico Madrid would be insulted if we even inquired. He's just signed for them. He's their star guy now. Atletico Madrid have this fantastic record of signing unbelievable strikers. But if he was, on the 1% chance he was available, I think Arsenal should move heaven and earth to get Julian Alvarez. But like I say, I'm with Charles Watts. I don't think that this is a thing that's real. I think it's being spread. Okay. Let's move on from striker. Like I say, Sesko or Gyokeres, I'm personally Sesko, but let's just get one done. Let's get one done for good price, good money, and get them into the club nice and quick. We're going to move down the pitch now, and we are going to go to the left wing position. It's definitely left wing as Arsenal are looking at. There is no talk about the backup to Bukayo Saka, because I think mainly because of Ethan Nwaneri's emergence this season and how well he's done. 9 goals, 2 assists for him in the 24-25 season, all competitions. That's a very healthy return and a very decent return for a 17-18-year-old. He will only get better with another pre-season, more time with the first team, and I think we'll see him play even more next season than we did last season. I'm sure that conversation will be happening in the contract talks, because of course all these contract talks are going on at the same time we're trying to do this transfer business, guys. So it's really important to remember that whilst Liverpool might be able to move for Florian Wirtz and Jeremy Frimpong early and get that done, they don't have quite as much business to do. And whilst speed is important, it's not the only thing that's important. So we've got to remember that. But at left wing, of course, Nico Williams has been the name for so long that we know Arsenal have looked at for, I think, now 2 summers in a row, if I'm remembering that correctly. And really importantly, Nico Williams, of course, has a fairly affordable release clause. The problem is his wages are humongous. Okay, we are talking him coming in and being the best paid player at Arsenal. As a very, very young player, I think he's 22, and he's had an okay season at Athletic Bilbao this year. He hasn't exactly set the league alight, but he's had an okay season, and we all remember him playing well in that Euros, of course. So we need to remember that yes, there's a good release clause, but he is expensive behind the scenes. The thing with Nico Williams that I think is really interesting is now there's a rumour again from Marca that Real Madrid are interested in Nico Williams. And I think that potentially could set off a spiral. Now, Xabi Alonso has gone to Real Madrid. He plays a 3-4-3 system. He likes to have 3 centre-backs and then really, really aggressive wing-backs with players tucking in that forward 3 line around a central striker. That to me would say if he's going to play that at Real Madrid, now I don't know how he plans to play at Real Madrid, but if he plans to play that at Real Madrid, with Trent at right wing back, that could be really exciting for the Real Madrid fans. A really interesting concept. Maybe Tchouaméni and Camavinga in the 2 central midfield spots, like he did at Leverkusen. That says to me he's looking for players in that forward 3 line who can get in the box and score goals. So I find it really odd that he's linked with, or Real Madrid, I should say, are linked with Nico Williams, he's primarily a very wide player, loves playing very, very wide, tucks in a bit, but he is much less of a striker than Rodrygo is. We've seen Rodrygo play up front at certain times for Real Madrid, and he can really get quite central and be quite dangerous. So the idea that they might be bringing in Nico Williams doesn't make too much sense to me. There is the idea that actually Real Madrid, they go out and try and get the world's best players, and they certainly would want to do that in Spain, and Nico Williams would represent a huge market opportunity should he come available, because Real Madrid won't look at his wages and think, oh, that's impossible. They will look at that and think, that's easy. That's easy for us to do. So there is that argument, but for me, if I'm looking at Xabi Alonso's style, I'm thinking, well, Rodrygo probably fits that a little bit better. So I think it's odd they're being linked with Nico Williams. Probably not too much in that, if you ask me. However, it could set off a chain reaction, because if Real Madrid bring in another winger and Rodrygo is not happy with his role in the squad, that could become an opportunity for Arsenal. Now, I think this one will go as long as Real Madrid can make it go, because ultimately Real Madrid have so much power, so much financial resource that actually they could afford to keep Rodrygo as he is unhappy at the club. If we didn't get the transfer he wanted, they could afford to keep him, pay him, and leave him on the bench and just bring him on in games that are less consequential for him, and have Nico Williams there. They could probably do that. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it for an extended period of time, but they could certainly do it till January. They could certainly do it till next summer. So they will push and push and push and try and get the very, very best price for Rodrygo, if he is even up for sale. So I think it will be a really drawn out process, this left wing position. There are, of course, options closer to home. Now, Brian Mbeumo is one that we've been linked with massively, but it seems that move is really advancing towards Manchester United. There's also Antoine Semenyo, who is I think he's a really talented player. Of course, he's not at that superstar level that Rodrygo represents. There's Anthony Gordon. He's been a small link, but I think with the relationship with Newcastle, again, I can't see that being too much of a possibility, although I would love that transfer. I think he is fantastic. It really does depend, I think, on how much the number 9 costs. If Arsenal can get a great price for Sesko or Gyokeres and really work that transfer and do a good job there, I think the left wing for Rodrygo becomes an option. If it turns out that they don't get a good price for Gyokeres or Sesko, I think they will turn their eyes to one of those signings, like a Semenyo, to try and keep costs down. I think they'll be able to get him for far less money out of Bournemouth, and he will, of course, command less wages than Rodrygo or Nico Williams. So I think what will most likely happen is the number 9 deal will get done. And they will get that done early, and the price of that deal and the wage structure will inform the rest of the business we do. I think that is a real possibility. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Arsenal's transfer window go in 2 phases. The first phase will be Martin Zubimendi, who has basically signed. We had this kind of confirmation recently, but he is now we think, doing a medical. I think he did a medical yesterday. So he is very, very close. Basically, we need the paperwork done and the pictures done. That's sort of where we're at with the Zubimendi deal. And I think we'll see the number 9 done early as well. Then I think we'll see a pause. I think we'll see a pause as Arsenal regroup, figure out their new financial position, figure out, okay, we spent X on Zubi, we spent X on the number 9. What does that leave us? Where do we go from here? So I think don't be surprised to see 2 or 3 deals get done very, very early, a gap, and then some done later into August. That's not how, as fans, we would want it to be done. We want those 5 signings done, sorted. Thank you very much. But I think, just as we did in last summer, we will probably have to sell. We have money available to spend, but with the amount of business that we have to do, we will probably have to make sure that we sign a few players, then get a few players out. I'm thinking Zinchenko. I'm thinking maybe Trossard, although that deal does seem to be, his contract does seem to be going in the right direction for him and getting not an extension, but a raise. But some of those players who we think are leaving, they've got to wrap up the Thomas Partey thing. They need to know if he's staying. Arteta's pushing for it, but we really don't know if that's going to be an affordable deal that can be done or not. So look, I think just temper your expectations. It's not all going to get done at once. So that's left wing. I think the number 9 price will affect the left wing signing that we make. Moving into midfield, and like I said, we've got Zubimendi done. I've spoken about this on my Xavi Simons preview. I'd love for us to bring in an attacking midfielder as well and have the balance of our midfield be 3 quite industrious midfielders of Rice, Merino, Zubimendi, and they can kind of rotate through 6 and 8. I mean, Zubimendi will obviously play 6, Merino will play 8, and Rice can go between the 2. So you have your 2 6 options as Rice and Zubimendi. You have 2 8 options of Rice and Merino. And then you add another 8 option in an attacking midfielder, and you've also got Martin Ødegaard. So you've got some real options there. Then you can have some kind of break glass options. I'd bring Fabio Vieira back. And you end up with your 3 industrious midfielders of Zubimendi, Rice, Merino, and you have Fabio Vieira, Martin Ødegaard, plus another attacking midfielder. They're your 6, and then you've got emergency options of Mars Lewis-Skelly, Kai Havertz, and Ethan Nwaneri, who can drop into those positions as well and play in those spots. So I think that's how you balance the midfield. So even if Partey does go, I'm not sure I would sign another 6 after Zubimendi. I would probably say, Rice, you are going to do a dual role between 6 and 8, depending on the game. And, you know, yeah, it might leave us a bit short if Zubimendi got injured, but I think a world where we're complaining about playing with Declan Rice at 6 is an okay world to live in. Who would I like that attacking midfielder to be? Like I say, I've spoken about Xavi Simons on a previous pod. It seems like he will be available from Leipzig this summer. There's huge chat about Eberechi Eze, and Eberechi Eze is a wonderful player, but I think he will be so expensive that I just don't think it is going to be an opportunity for Arsenal, unfortunately. And I think he will go somewhere else. Apparently Bayern are looking at Eze. You know, they already went for Elise last summer, who has had a fantastic season for them, helping them win the Bundesliga. If Bayern are interested in Eze, watch out for them next season. That will be a really formidable attack and a wonderful chance for them to go and win the Champions League, I would say. So I just don't think Eze is an option for Arsenal. I don't think that's something that we will be able to do from an affordability point of view, and then from maybe, you know, the game time that we can give him. So yeah, I'd like to see an attacking midfielder, but I'm not sure where it will come from. Of course, there is still Sverre Nipan. Now, we covered Sverre Nipan in the January transfer window, that kind of industrious 8 from Norway, currently playing in Rosenborg. Didn't end up moving, stayed where he was. Now, Villa have been really linked with him, but Villa have obviously missed out on Champions League football. Sverre Nipan will probably cost in the 15 to 20 million pounds, and actually Aston Villa are probably now right on the limit, if not past it, of PSR and UEFA's financial fair play rules as well. They could have a really difficult summer, and it might be that Villa's targets are now available. It might even be that some of their players are available, and there's a really interesting prospect in Morgan Rogers there. Of course, there's Ollie Watkins, who might fall into the striker discussion, but I don't think Arsenal will do that unless it's a real emergency signing at the end. Morgan Rogers could represent a great opportunity. No Champions League football for Aston Villa. They need to sell. I think all the big clubs will be looking at Morgan Rogers this summer. And if he is available, Arsenal need to be in that conversation, if you ask me, because I would absolutely love a midfield that has Declan Rice, Martin Zubimendi, Martin Odegaard, and Morgan Rogers as its primary options. And then, you've got Marino to bring in there. You might still have Thomas Partey to bring in there. You've got a whole swell of possible situations and setups. So for me, Xavi Simons, I really, really like him if he's available at a good price. But Morgan Rogers as well could be a really, really good player. He might be very expensive. The English tax is a thing that happens. Premier League clubs have to have homegrown players. Morgan Rogers would be one of those, and they charge more for that. But Arsenal might be really keen to fill that as a gap in the club. And there is also the world, guys, where we sign a number 9. We don't sign an out-and-out left winger. We sign we keep Martinelli and Trossard, and then we sign a player in Morgan Rogers or Eze or Simons who play in that kind of, people call it a wing fielder. Like, they can play as an 8, but they can drift out onto a wing. Eze can do that really, really well and be a threat from the side of the pitch as well. So that's one to watch as a potential option for Arsenal to explore. And again, this is why I say I think it's going to go in 2 phases. Zubimendi in the number 9, then see what the market's like. If there isn't a winger available, would they potentially look to do a deal like Morgan Rogers, Eze or Simons, who can play kind of 2 of those positions and add depth and add different styles and quality to both left wing and left 8. Really interesting. Like I say, Zubimendi done, really excited for him. He looks like a Rice Partey cross. I watched a really great analysis on YouTube. I can't remember who did it, so I'm not going to be able to give credit, but I am going to give credit to Billy Carpenter, who's done a wonderful write-up as well. So find Billy on Blue Sky, Billy Carpenter, and read his, I think it's about 8,000 words on Martin Zubimendi, speaking about how he plays. One thing I really noticed from the tapes is he doesn't run with the ball much, but when he does, he drives with the ball like Declan Rice can, but he can also pass like Thomas Partey. He's a really interesting player, and he plays in a way, this is something Billy's article highlighted to me, he plays in a way where he can be so isolated in the middle. He can play basically as a one-man midfield at times, and it's really interesting to watch the clips and see how he is so brave on the ball, is so happy to take it with 3 or 4 around him. Again, Thomas Partey and it allows the fullbacks to be incredibly high. And I'm wondering if that's a slight tactical development we might see through the introduction of Martin Zubimendi. Actually, less double pivoting and more kind of the fullbacks going and joining the final line of attack. We have sort of four lines of attack, 5 lines of attack sometimes. But if we were in the 4, at the moment, at least Miles Lewis-Skelly comes into that second line in the build-up phase. Could we see him be higher and fill a sort of left 8 spot, and then the left 8 go even higher and be like a second striker, as we've seen Declan Rice and Mikel Merino do? That could be a really interesting development if Zubimendi can play so isolated and on his own, because at the moment we sort of back up Thomas Partey in the midfield with a left back inverting. If we don't need them to invert quite so deep and they can invert higher up the pitch or even overlap, we might have a completely different style of play next year. So that's one to watch when we get Zubimendi in, and I'll be keeping a close eye on that for the pre-season friendlies. Let's just quickly give us 2 minutes before we wrap up towards the end with backup goalies. João Garcia, 30 million euros by the sounds of things. Barcelona are now in the market for João Garcia as well. Now, it's really interesting because they've got ter Stegen. Looks like they're going to re-sign Szczesny on another contract. So if they're going for João Garcia, is it a plan to loan him out? Is it just that they, again, like Real Madrid might be doing with Nico Williams, they need to buy the best young Spanish players to be the best Spanish club? I don't know. But it's a really interesting one to keep an eye on because, like I say, and I've said throughout this podcast, Arsenal have so much business to do and cost will come into this, guys. Yes, we've got money to spend, but we don't have the world of like all the world's money to spend. There will still be a limit. 30 million on a backup goalie is a really interesting one. For me, I wonder if Arsenal are not looking at this as a backup goalie. I wonder if they are looking at this Raul Garcia deal and saying he will come in. This year he'll be the cup keeper. In another year's time he will be, I hasten to say a rotation option, but maybe they'll give him a few Premier League games. And then they'll be looking to sink out David Raya from that point forward, because David Raya will be in his 30s next year. He's, of course, a wonderful goalkeeper. He's not getting replaced anytime soon. But is this, rather than backup goalkeeper shopping, is this future-proofing? Is this making sure that we don't end up in a scenario where we can't play the style of play we want to play because we don't have the right goalkeeper? Is it future-proofing? I don't know. Goalkeepers do have a longer shelf life than outfield players, but sometimes just a refresh can be really, really important, which is that's what we saw with David Raya. We loved Aaron Ramsdale. We thought he was doing a really good job. He had a couple of errors and he was out. He was gone. I just think it might be future-proofing. So, yes, it's a lot of money and maybe they won't do it this summer. And maybe he'll go somewhere else because they aren't doing it this summer. He's had a wonderful, wonderful year with Espanyol. However, could it be Arsenal just trying to future-proof? And if they do get it done, I think we need to look at this in a different way. I don't think we need to look at it as we've wasted 30 million on a backup keeper and complain about the other signings we make because they weren't expensive enough or they weren't big enough. I think we need to look at it as they're getting us ready. That they are signing the next guy. And if they can convince Raul Garcia that is a good idea and a good plan, all credit to them. I don't think if I was in his scenario and all these clubs around Europe were coming knocking for me, I would look at an Arsenal scenario where you're the backup for at least 2 more years, maybe 3, and you're going, yeah, I'll do that. I don't think he's going to do that, but you never know. Arsenal, Arteta, very, very convincing club, very, very convincing man. I'm going to leave it there, guys. I think that sums it up. So, yeah, the strikers, Julian Alvarez's name is being linked now, but I really don't buy it. I don't think that's true. I think we need to get the best price for either Gyokeres or Sesko and get it done nice and early, and then our transfer window can start to start to take shape. We'll have Zubimendi, we'll have a number 9. I think we'll pause at that point, sell a few players, get some funds back, try and set ourselves back up, go again, and maybe we can reach for either a winger or a wing fielder in an Eze or a Rodgers or a Simons, and that will all depend on price, market availability, market opportunities. And then, of course, I think we need to balance that midfield and maybe sign a backup goalkeeper. I'm not mad if there's another loan for a backup goalkeeper, by the way. I don't think Neto worked, but there will probably be opportunities out there where you can bring in a keeper who just does a job, and I think that would be all right. I hear there's a goalkeeper at Southampton who's just been relegated who might be a decent buy. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Like I said at the start, please go and find wherever you can leave a review on your podcast app of choice and leave a 5-star review. It really, really helps on my mission to get Arsenal Unfiltered into the ears of as many Arsenal fans as possible. For now, though, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for following. Thank you so much for listening, and I will speak to you very, very soon.